7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year!
Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. We are now in the year of 2025, and if you are a Siena College, you have every reason to be excited for the year ahead. You just ended 2024 on a high note after changing coaches, changing players, and changing its tune. Siena basketball only had 2 wins in the calendar year at the very beginning when they made the coaching change. Afterwards, when Gerry McNamara arrived, he managed to put a splash on the Saints immediately, with 2 overtime wins and some successes here and there with players like Major Freeman, Justice Schultz, and also upgrading Brendan Coyle from walk-on status to now the leading 3-point scorer in the MAAC. And the Saints finally decided to go out with a bang on their non-conference slate at Cornell. This was the second matchup in a series with Cornell. Cornell beat the Saints last year 74-95. You know, it's an Ivy League team, so you're going to have a lot of your players return. There's not a lot of turnover in the Ivy League. There's also a lot of people returning anyway from last season. Among the players, Guy Ragland, Cooper Nord, and A.K. Okereke, all returning this year. According to one of the commentators of the Siena games, Cornell was basically Holy Cross on steroids. Holy Cross was the team the Saints played just 10 days beforehand. And what buried the Saints under Holy Cross was their 3-point shooting, which was impressive during the second half. But the Saints pulled off a win in their highest score to date so far, 83-77. Cornell, the second-place finisher in the Ivy League, has now lost 5. Our big man of the game is Justice Schultz. He had 5 double-figure scores, including a double-double of 16 points and a career high of assists. He is the first to get dimes since Jalen Pickett in 2020.
I think it's been going well. You know, I got my guys that supporting me. I got, Coach McNamara supporting me at all times. I like this group, and I like what I can do at this level, and it's been fun so far.
The Saints began immediately with a splash, 12-2 to start 2:41 seconds in, and then Cornell had 8 of the next 10, and then for the rest of the game, it was Siena versus Cornell trying to battle for the top spot. And when the Saints were down, new players would come in and take the stand, including Gavin Doty, who was able to get the final scores in place to get the victory in. Doty was cheered by 250 of his family members and friends, watching and waiting for him to strike. He had 4 free throws that all went in, and then he had 16 points on the night. Also with 16, aside from Schultz and Doty, was Brendan Coyle, of course, 13 from the second half for him. Peter Carey and Major Freeman also getting some help as well. Meanwhile, for Cornell, Guy Ragland had some scores, 12 of 14, and Nazir Williams had 4 in the double figures, 16 out of 20. And just so you know how great Cornell was heading into this game, they had just beaten California, which is now an ACC team. And the last time Cornell beat an ACC team was 73 years ago. They could beat an ACC team, but they can't beat a MAAC team. Add to the other things that have been going on at Cornell, they just came off of an NIT run, and they also lost their head coach Brian Earl over to William and Mary. His replacement was John Jakes, who brought them to their currently last NCAA tournament appearance in 2010. The other pointer I have in this big victory was Gerry McNamara himself, who has experience playing against Cornell when he coached at Syracuse. In McNamara's 15 seasons at Syracuse, they played Cornell 12 times, and each of those were wins. For the record, Syracuse has not lost to Cornell since 1968. And this was also a wild calendar year for Gerry McNamara as well, because he didn't even know he was going to be getting the Siena position back in January of 2024. He was still at Syracuse trying to bring the Orange back to a championship after Jim Boeheim retired. Well, Jim Boeheim can be very proud of him now for what he's done with the Saints. His team is now 6-7 and ready to head into MAAC play. Now we're flipping the calendars over to 2025, and Siena is flipping the calendars over to all-conference play from here on out. And the Saints have Manhattan first on tap. They made the trip over to the MVP Arena on Friday, January 3rd. The Saints in Manhattan kind of had a bit of a struggle last season. I mean, Manhattan's was different, though, because they had just changed coaches. And you know what? While we're at it, let's talk about their coach. His name is John Gallagher. He's 47 years old, and he's only been at the helm for about a year and a half now. He was brought in to replace Steve Mazziello, who was fired. When John Gallagher arrived, he had already had coaching experience at the University of Hartford, coaching for 12 years there. He brought the Hawks to their only NCAA tournament appearance and also oversaw a lot of abilities in the program, which unfortunately went down to Division III in 2023. Gallagher brought a lot of his Hartford roster over to Manhattan and tried to make a splash, but really couldn't in his first season. The Saints actually beat Manhattan on the road last year in one of their only victories, but then Manhattan responded with a 68-70 victory over in Albany. This year, Gallagher's squad is looking a little different. They had some returners, including Daniel Hackett, who was the lone holdover from the Steve Mazziello era, as well as Wesley Robinson, Brett Rumpel, Jaden Winston, and Shaquille Bender. They also had an impact player that I talked about before named Will Sidner, who is their leading scorer. And their big center is 7-footer Aman Sandhu. I believe I'm pronouncing his name right. He came over from Monmouth, which used to be a MAAC school. And it was a game the Saints were going to have to fight like hell to get past because Manhattan does have a dangerous backcourt. And it seemed like Will Sidner was unstoppable until the Saints chipped at the very end. And that brings us to the fact that the Saints won in not one, but 2 overtimes. And for Gerry McNamara, this is 4 overtimes in total for his career so far. Because this is the Gerry McNamara squad, you knew the Saints were not going to give up. And the Saints not only won in double overtime, but they also cracked a milestone. Multiple ones, as a matter of fact. And it was their 800th Division I victory. And also, in terms of scores, it was the highest single game point total since a game against Fordham in 2000, where they won over Fordham 107-91. And you know what? The backcourt of Winston and Bender could not be matched by the Justice Schultz and Major Freeman of Siena College, who had 24 points apiece for the Saints. And they are now 27-9 all-time in MAAC home opener. Not only that, it was also a milestone for Major Freeman. He had his 100th collegiate three-pointer. And Justice Schultz came up close to a second straight double-double in assists. And it wasn't an easy start for the Saints. They were outscored by 13 at the very beginning. And at the end of the first half, Peter Carey was the one that scored a lot of the points to get the Saints' 43-42 advantage at the break. Manhattan then played around with a lot of free throws, and after being down by as many as 5 towards the end of the game, there were tons of foul shots made, and also a Major Freeman three-pointer, surprise of all surprises. And all of a sudden, the score was tied at 79. With a lot of players in foul trouble and Manhattan player Wesley Robinson fouling out, it turned into another close contest. And it was our friend Gavin Doty that tried to clean up some of the messes left by some of the other Saints. He came off the bench to score 14 of his 19 points in the overtime period, as well as a career high of 11 rebounds, which makes him our player spotlight. Gavin Doty was absolutely incredible this game, and you know what? This kind of fits him for a freshman spot right now. He's not going to be anywhere near the top of the rankings right now because we still have a lot of the players with seniority on the roster, but eventually I could see Gavin Doty being a starter, should he choose to stay at Siena. And then towards the end, Manhattan just started to look tired, and Siena was starting to cash in on a lot of their threes, and eventually the score reached the triple digits. And this was an entertaining game for me to work because I was timeout coordinator for the game. So I sat down and watched the whole thing up close and personal. They seem like they have not had any holiday hangover whatsoever, and that is great. I think, if anything, the hangover was seen before the holidays. And now, let's just hope that what I just said does not curse anything, and we get some good plays coming in throughout the month of January.
And you know what? Let's continue giving Gavin Doty some love. Here's our mic'd up segment with some praise towards him.
Gavin Doty saved us. You know, Marcus got the 2 fouls, and Gav came in, didn't miss a beat. Playing out in the open court, that's his cup of tea.
Doty driving, hanging, and scoring.
Yeah, they look some big shots.
Doty for 3. Doty could be your hero.
My mom had bought like 250 tickets for people locally from my hometown, so it was just a blessing to be out there tonight in front of my family and my supporters and fans. It's just great to have the game I had in front of the game.
Well, starting this week, the Siena men and women will have very identical schedules. While the men were playing Cornell at their school, the women welcomed Cornell over to the UHY Center in Loudonville. Kind of like a high school schedule if you think about it. And the way the MAAC has things done this year, so when the men are playing one team, the women are playing the same team at the opposite location. So the Cornell women made the trip to Loudonville, and this looked like a doable game for the women, which were 5-5 heading into the game, as well as undefeated in MAAC play. However, without Anijah Jackson, there were going to be some problems. Yes, unfortunately, now you can add Anijah Jackson to the list of people on the injury report. And the question was, who was going to step up and be point guard? Obviously, Teresa Sapala was still doing good. She had a career-high 31, but despite the career high, Siena lost 73-76 thanks to some late fourth quarter action by Cornell itself. KB Hadley was trying to step in for Jackson, and she did a good job. 8 assists, a career high for her, and a 4-assist career high for Anaja Brown, who had 16. Esther Turry, career high 9 points, not counting the exhibition game, obviously. And late in the first quarter, Siena had the lead. They led by 10, thanks to some career highs by Zoe Richardson. However, Cornell had the final 2 minutes on an 8-0 run to have it be a 2-point game in the second. And unfortunately, to go out with a whimper on non-conference play, Teresa Sapala did have a 3-pointer 18 seconds in towards the end of the game. Siena could have tried again to make another 3-pointer, but unfortunately they couldn't connect. Sapala couldn't catch the ball in time, and Cornell hung on with their lead standing. As for Cornell, they had 24 free throws, and among the players in the lead, Summer Parker Hall, 13 out of 21 shots taken. And as for their leading scorer, Emily Pape with 26. It was also the first meeting between the Siena women and Cornell since December 5th, 1980. Siena wasn't even Division I yet on the women's side. And they also provided some historical facts during the game about that, including the fact that Jimmy Carter had just lost the election to Ronald Reagan. And obviously we bring Jimmy Carter up because he just passed away. He is the only president in U.S. history as of right now to live to 100 years old. I do think that the women could have easily have gotten a victorious win. I think it stinks not having Anaisha Jackson, and obviously Anaya Hooker's also been benched as well. And just like the men, MAAC play begins, so there's every reason to start entering the leaderboards now, because this is when everything counts. So much like how the men welcomed Manhattan over at their neck of the woods, the women headed all the way down to Riverdale, New York to play against the Jaspers down there. Yeah, side note, Manhattan is actually not located in Manhattan. It's technically located in the Bronx, which makes no sense, but whatever. So the women playing over at Draddy Gymnasium, and first time since 2018, they are now off to a 3-0 start. The women, in a close-knit battle towards the very end that they were expected to lose, the women came up by 2 points, beating Manhattan 62-60. And Teresa Sapala, she is on fire. 24 points for the player from Finland. Naja Brown with 11, Zariah Price with 9 and 11 boards, and plus Miriam Traore and Anaisha Jackson are back. Jackson coming off of the foot injury. She didn't score anything, but she still had 6 assists. Traore had 9 points, by the way. And the Saints did lead during the game. They actually had a 10-2 lead at the very beginning, but unfortunately Manhattan tried to cut the deficit down, which they did, and for most of the rest of the game, it was all Manhattan's lead. There were times where they would respond to Manhattan's victories, and pretty much at that point, it was just a 3-point shooting contest. Every time Siena would make a victory, it was Manhattan's turn, and vice versa. And the score was decided when Teresa Sapala stole the ball and was fouled, and at the free throw line, made both of her shots. Manhattan then tried to make a 3-pointer, and it didn't go in. Boom. There we go. On the Manhattan side of things, player Breonna Davis led them with 22 points, 7-11 from the field, 7-8 from the free throw line. By the way, that guy interviewing Terry Primm is Chris Smooth Williams. Smooth is his nickname. In my opinion, Chris needs to go on to the Nationals. He's really good. He's very fair with his commentating and does not pick sides. He is very neutral. And he also emceed a event that I spoke at way back in 2019 when the MAAC tournament was still over in Albany. The occasion was my friend and I were talking about unified sports, and Chris had this to say about me.
I want Sam on my team.
Well, I coached yesterday a unified team, and Sam, I would have loved to have you on the court with my team yesterday.
I think I probably took Chris's compliment into consideration as to what I'd be doing in my future, and here I am now doing all of this, and God forbid if Chris stumbles upon one of these, his wish came true. By the way, shout out to Maggie Robinson, the girl that's with me in that video. Hopefully you're doing well. So the women stayed in the New York City area following the Manhattan win, heading over to Iona for their first game against the Gales this season. The Gales ultimately prevailed in that contest, the women not really able to show up at all during the game, especially in the first half. And those are Terry Primm's words, not mine. You're looking at the loss right there. It was not an easy game for the Saints, this despite the fact that Anaisha Jackson was back and healthy, and there was also a career high for Miriam Traore, who is our player spotlight. Traore, career high 14, looking to build on that. Teresa Sapala still in the 20s. She had 21 points as well. 4th time in 5 games she's reached 20 points. Anaja Brown leading the team with 8 boards and a career high 5 assists, and also a career high 4 assists from Esther Turry. I mean, good on Miriam Traore. She was at least able to give the Saints some pull when they needed it. Anijah Jackson's still kind of not that hot, but I'm sure eventually she'll come through. But unfortunately, Iona was making a lot of their scores. It was kind of similar to the Holy Cross game in a way, because every shot Iona made went in. Career highs for both Ella Fajardo and Judith Gomez for the Gales. They set a single game high in points and field goal percentage, which is 52% shooting. The Saints did outscore the Gales towards the second half. Towards the end of the game, the Gales were scoreless. However, they had a pair of free throws with 43 seconds in, and that's what did it. The Saints were undefeated in MAAC play until this very game. However, Iona managed to build on their winning streak, and now the Gales are 4-0. Yeah, the Saints were really not hot this one, it looked like. They really were not able to keep up the pace with Iona, and it was also an Iona home game, so they had a lot of advantages. And you know what? I still give the women some credit, because Miriam Traore really stepped it up, and again, you know, it still stinks to be shorthanded, but any player could choose to step up at any time, and it seems like Siena can be put into place, which is great. I love the teamwork. I love the appreciation that Terry Primm has for wanting to work the players rather than bench them. And Miriam Traore, Anijah Jackson, Naja Brown, Teresa Sapala, I'm very proud of them. They hung tough. They're going to continue to hang tough as they welcome Kids Day on January 11th. All right, time for the MAAC report. This was the final week of non-conference action and also the first weekend for conference action officially. Starting off with Rider, which got a bye week. Manhattan, obviously, we just talked about them. St. Peter's lost to Quinnipiac by 13 points. Canisius, another bye week. Fairfield lost to Merrimack 54-67. Before playing St. Peter's, Quinnipiac played against Hofstra and beat them 69-75. That game ended in overtime. Marist playing against the Binghamton University Bearcats, beating them 69-51, followed by a win over Iona 70-65. The Red Foxes are at the top of the MAAC right now. Niagara playing against Lemoyne, which notably has former Siena player Zach Tekken. They beat them 88-69. And Sacred Heart playing against Manhattanville, 169 the final score. As for the women's side of things, the Rider women played against Fairfield, losing badly to them 37-69, followed by a loss to Manhattan, also pretty bad, 40-81. St. Peter's women playing against Quinnipiac and losing to them 39-54. Quinnipiac's looking like the hot team to beat right now. Canisius losing to Colgate 47-66, as well as Sacred Heart 63-70. The Griffs have not had any game wins since the very beginning of the season and are currently winless in MAAC play. Fairfield women also played against Merrimack, also winning over them 72-48. The Quinnipiac women, meanwhile, also played Marist, beating them 64-52. Before playing Siena, the Iona women also played against Marist in a close contest. Marist lost to them 67-69. Mount St. Mary's closing out non-conference play against Morgan State, losing 68-72, and then playing against the Niagara women. Much like the Canisius women, the Niagara women just have not been that hot. They've also been losing as well. They lost 89-68 to Mount St. Mary's. And before playing Marist and Siena, the Iona women played against Hofstra and lost 43-59. All right, fast forward to a week ahead. We have a quieter one coming up. The Siena men playing against Iona on Sunday, January 5th. Their first game against the Gales this season. Following that, it's a battle against Quinnipiac for both teams. The women have the first game, their Kids Day game against the Quinnipiac women. That's going to be an 11 a.m. game over at the UHY Center. And then the men head down to Quinnipiac over in Connecticut to play against them at 7 o'clock on January 10th. Quinnipiac women are looking to be the top team to beat right now because currently they have only lost one game and they have a very strong team ahead. So the women better watch out. And as for the men, well, the Quinnipiac men were the top-rated contenders. They didn't go to the tournament last year, but they're still a powerful team, and they were number one in the preseason polls. Oh, and by the way, Tom Gozlowski of Levesque and Gaz fame called the Manhattan game on January 3rd. Gaz and I have met each other before and also got to know him very well when I was working with the Firebirds because Levesque is the president, and I also got to watch Levesque and Gaz do a few live shows, including a live interview they did with Gerry McNamara back in August. That was pretty cool. And the other thing is, much like Gerry McNamara, Gaz is a Syracuse alum, so you got to have that appreciation as well. And with that being said, we can pretty much conclude this video out on a high note. First video of 2025. Let's get it. Let's make it a great year, and stay tuned for more uploads to come. I have a lot of things planned for the year ahead.
Terry the offensive rebound. Coyle cutting to the rim and the flush. Schultz jumps the passing lane. Schultz, the pick six. Freeman on the take. Freeman to the glass and the foul. Schultz dumps it down for Carey, who lays it in. Carey's got 21. Doty for three. Doty could be your hero.